So hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Sanskar and we are going to continue our series of creating a to-do web app with Flutter. So this is the part 2 and just a quick recap of what we have done in the part 1. We understand about the different features which we are going to cover in this particular video series, and also we discussed how to connect our Flutter app with Firebase, Flutter Web App specifically. So if you have learned about Android and iOS, in that video we discussed about how to connect Flutter Web App with Firebase. So if you haven't watched that, the link of the playlist will be in the description. Just click on that and watch that one first. It will be much highly recommended. Okay, so what is the target for this video? In this video, we are going to create this awesome looking sign in user interface of our app, and then we will be creating the functions so that we can make this sign in with Google work. And once we are done with that, we basically will send the user to the home screen, and there we will just for this video we are just going to show the username and email on that, nothing much. Okay, so first let's get started by creating the user interface of this screen. So first, understanding what are the different widgets we are using in this and how we are going to create this UI. So you can divide this UI into this body section and this app bar section. So if you have built any kind of apps with Flutter, you may have always be using app bar and a body going with the scaffold, right? So this is an app bar, and now the one thing which I know about my app, because we have discussed it, this first screen and the home screen both have same app bar, so it does not make sense for me to create that again and again. So for this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to name that widget. So it's going to be package, as it's called in Android Studio. I'm going to name it widgets. In that, I'm going to create a new file which is going to be called widget. Dot will be written automatically. By the way, it's on GitHub already available, so the repository link will be in the description, so that if you have any trouble, you can just go ahead and check it out. Okay, so the first thing which we are going to import is going to be material, since that's so. First, let me clear what I'm trying to do. So rather than creating the app bar again and again in every screen, I'm going to create a function. Okay, it's kind of a function which is going to return a widget. Okay, so how do we create a function? We first specify what does that function return. So you may have created function which does not return anything. We use void. They may return a string, they may return something like integer, they may return something like a boolean value, but for this one specifically we will be returning a widget. Now this widget is actually app bar, so I'm going to just name my function. This is the name of the function now, main app bar, using camel case. And then I'm going to define this. So every function have these, okay, to accept some arguments if required, and then we will have these curly braces. Now first we will say return, then I'm going to say app bar. Inside that, I'm going to provide the title. So title is how you provide the text over here, or this one which I have used image. Okay, so now if you want to use an image, there are multiple ways to do so. I can say image dot asset. So there are 4 ways how we use a particular image or show that on the screen. We have asset, network, file, and memory. So if you have uint8 list, if you then you will use memory. If you have file, which you get from image picker if you're using on Android, iOS, and even there is an image picker for web. So if you want, I'll make a tutorial on that as well in upcoming series. There is a network on which you can pass in the URL, and it will load that. And we will be specifically using assets, since I want to save this particular image, because yeah, that's just what I'm going to do. So first let me get that image. You will be able to get that image from the GitHub repository. I'm going to get that from my last project. So let me first go ahead and create folder. So go in the main directory and create a new directory, called it assets. Inside that, create a new directory, call it images. Now many times you may be directly creating the images folder, and the reason is you can actually directly create the images folder, but for this project specifically, I personally have become a great fan of this font. It's called Overpass, and I really like that. So in most of my projects you may have been able to see. So I'll be using fonts as well, so let me incorporate that as well. I'm going to create a new directory. I'm going to call it fonts. Okay, so now let me grab these. So the fonts are going to be available as well. The images are going to be available. So you just have to like kind of open that in GitHub, or basically just download the project from GitHub. So how GitHub works, just let me clear that quick so that you don't have any trouble continuing forward. So go to any repository. I have a lot of them, so let me show you with anyone. For example, I created this 5-minute general app. So I don't have an image, but anyways, so you just have to click on this clone or download, and you will be able to download it, and then you can open that. So it will extract and then just open. So you can also do this, like copy the files, fonts, so that you don't have to search them, right? Like if you want, you can use your custom fonts as well. This is just your preference. So these are the fonts which we are going to use. Let me copy the images as well. I'm going to paste them. So for images, we have two images. The first one is the logo, which basically is a text with a like no background, kind of. That's what it is called, maybe. And then we have this to-dos, this particular image. I got it from freepick.com. So that's a really good website. I personally use it a lot. freepick.com. Yeah, so you get a lot of photos and stuff. So that is where I got this image from. You don't have to visit that, you just can download directly. So now to use any asset image file, we actually have to just pass in the path of that particular image. But before, we have to define it in our perpspec.yaml file. So over here in the perpspec.yaml, you can see this comment. Let me minimize this. To add assets to your application, add an asset section like this. So this is how you have to add it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just get rid of comments. So I can see it's just two deletes, so like that. And then I'm going to add assets, because that's my main directory. My main directory is not images. First it's assets. Inside of assets we have images, and over there we have a particular image. For example, logo.png. Sorry, over here I wanted to type png. Now one thing which you can understand is we can define it like this, but for our case we have two images, so we actually can go ahead and define it like this. So I can just copy paste it one again and then define that todos.png. But for most cases, if you have more than one images, 10 images, 20 images, some projects may have hundreds of images, so it does not make sense to define each and every image like that. So the most favorable one, or how I usually go about this, is basically defining it like this. So assets slash images slash. So by this you will be able to use all the images available inside of it. Okay, so once you will do that, you have to click on packages.get. But before we do so, I also wanted to add all the different libraries or the packages which we will use. Or let's do this first. Let's complete the UI and then we will work on the backend. So let me minimize this, and this is the screen. So now we have to define the path over here. So first, what is the path? From the main directory, it's assets. So I defined assets. Inside that we are inside the images, so I'll say images. Inside that we are the name of the file is logo. So logo dot, make sure to define the extension, it's a must. Make sure to end this with a semicolon. Okay, so we have the title. Now the problem is this logo is a little bit big, right? You can understand it's like 353. I haven't like make it like this much of size. However, so to use that, I'm just going to provide it a height. So we can actually provide it height. We even can provide the width. I don't have a particular requirement on width, because I can understand I have a lot of it, but I do understand I don't want this to be like taking a lot of space. I just want it to make sure to look good. So I can just say height around 35. Okay, now we have defined the image. Now if I want, I can just select the Chrome web over here, and then I can click on run. By the way, if you're using an Visual Studio Code, you will get an option over here to run, actually over here I think, and you just have to click on it. You will get a drop down of different options available, and just select Chrome web and it will work perfectly fine over there as well. And if you have any trouble, make sure to comment down below. I'll be more than happy to help you in that. So now it will be running, but before that, let me clear one more thing as well. So okay, it's running. Let's see. So for some reason, I think it's not showing this. Okay, not some reason. Let me just we have to actually define this inside the home. So I'll say scaffold. uh, First, actually, we are working on this sign in. Sorry for that. We are going to go inside the sign in dot dart, and then inside the scaffold we will define an app bar, and then we have to import this one. Okay, so I don't want to define it directly, rather I will create a class called widgets which will include all of these. Okay, so now I can just go over here, I can say widgets dot not dot like that. Now you can see we have this main app bar available, and if I will save this, hopefully we will be able to see an app bar. Great, that really looks good. Okay, but one thing is there, I don't want that to be in the center. As I can see, according to my UI, I want that in the left hand side. So how we can do that? Well, there is a property called center tile. I just want to make that as false. If I will save that, I can see it's over here. Next thing is, I don't want an elevation. What do I mean by elevation? You can see this, there is a drop shadow between below this. We don't want that according to our UI. So I'm going to just go ahead and say elevation, and that's going to be 0.0. What is the next step? The next step is, I think the color is different, right? So let's define and get the color code from this, and I'll tell you how we can use that. So in the main dot we have the color code here. So this is just a hex code which I got from this website. This is a really good website. Colors. Let's use something else. Like, I have already created that one, so let's we can use another color as well if you want. But so you can visit this website. This is a really good website. You just have to press space and it will generate some great colors for you. I'm just going to use this color, for example. You just have to copy the hex code, and then we want to define that color to this app bar. Now there are multiple ways to do that. First is, you can directly give the background color to this, but I'm actually going to go ahead and change the primary color through my main dot dart, so that if I use somewhere else as well, the theme of the app will stay consistent. So now I can say color. Now there are two ways to use or define a color in Flutter, or like when you're building apps. So first is, you can say colors dot, then you have these material colors available which you can use directly out of the box, or you can define your own hex code. So how you do that? You say color, these brackets, 0xff. Actually this 0xff defines the opacity, but for the major of the time you are never going to change that, because there is another option. So once you say the 0xff, then you will define the hex code. Then if you want to change the opacity, you can always save with opacity and stuff like that. So that's why I mentioned you will always be using 0xff and then the hex code, and that's how you use a custom color. So if I will save it now, I think it's the same color, or at least really close. Let's see. Okay, but at least you can see that there is no elevation. So the next step is actually getting this background color. So it was kind of a snow color, I believe, which I got. It's not much different than white, but that's and this color was like I got from over here as well. So if I will click here, you can see you will get a lot of colors. Anyways, yeah, so this color will be defined as a background for the scaffold of every screen in my app. So I can just say scaffold background color, and similarly I'll say color 0xff and define that. So now if I will save this, you can see the color is better now, something related or something like this. Okay, let's go back to the sign in, and now once our app bar is done, we need to work on the body section. So I'm going to say body, then I'm going to say what. So first we need to understand, what do we have? We have three widgets. Okay, the first one is image, second is the text, third is kind of a button. It's not exactly the button, but we will create a custom button. So these three widgets are aligned vertically. So to align one or more widgets, actually two or more widgets horizontally, we use something called column. So I'm going to say column. Inside column we have children's. The first children is going to be an image. So how do we use image? We just discussed that. We are going to use an asset image. So we are going to define the path, which is going to be assets / images. Hopefully I'm defining the spelling correctly. And then the name of that. So it's ToDo dot png. Okay, that makes sense. If I'll save that, I should be able to see an image. If you are seeing like this, like for example you are saving and it's not working, just go over here and reload this. It happens a lot of time for me, and I usually just save here and then reload from there. So great, but the image size is really big. So first let's fix that. I think the height I preferred was 200. I'm not sure, but that's a little bit less than what we want. Maybe let me reload it from here. Okay, that's fine. That looks good. The next thing, what I want, let me go back to this. I need a little bit of space, right? So to add that particular space, we used sized box. So I'll say sized box, and then we can provide a particular height. So in this case, I think around 6 will be fine. And then we will be defining the text. So for the text, it says ToDo app, ToDo, ToDo app, ToDo app for awesome people. Okay. Then we need the vertical space again. This time maybe a little bit more, because since the text, we want a little bit of separation from the button. So how are we going to create the button? To create the button, we will be using something called container. Inside container, we will have a child of text. This text is going to be sign in with Google. Okay, so how do I want this to be structured? The first thing is we want to define. So basically, what is a container? A container is basically defining that we have this particular space. Defining that this space have a particular child, then that space will be decided. How much the space will be taken will be decided according to the text. So for example, right now, if I will just say this and go over here, this is how it looks like. But this is not how we want that to look like. So I think this is going to be better. I can just put it here. And this to be here. Is it better or not? I don't know. I think I need to. Okay. So now what do we want? So we have this, but we want to make it look like this. So how can we do that? First thing first, I think this is at the top, like left hand corner. We don't want that. We want this to be in the center. So how we can do that? We have a property in column. Uh, Actually, we will be using two property in that case, but right now, as I can see, we want this to be centered vertically. We want this to be centered horizontally as well. So in that particular case, what we can do, the first thing which we can do is we can wrap it in the center container widget. Actually, there are multiple ways to do so. The first way is you can just define an alignment property, alignment dot center, which will make this column into the center. So if I will save that, but usually like the column does take the vertical space as much as it can, so maybe it's not going to be vertically, but yeah, this container can help us in aligning it center horizontally. Then we can just go ahead over here and say main axis size dot minimum, which I'm mentioning that I want the main axis size, which is the horizontal vertical for column. I want that size to be minimum as possible. So if I will save that, it's going to work. There are multiple workarounds of how you can do it other ways, because there are alignment properties in column itself, like main axis alignment, like horizontal axis, cross axis alignment. That's how it is called. But yeah, I think most of it is done. Okay, so now what do we want? To create this particular red kind of a button, we are going to go inside this. Let me just wait till it's loading so that we can see at the same time. But I think we can continue. So what we will be doing, so what we are going to do now is we are going to make the sign in with Google button look like this, and also making this I think the space should be increased a little bit as well. So I'm just going to make that to around 16, make this to around 8, and increase this font size and stuff. So for that we use the styling, and then we will say text style. Over there we can define some font size. So font size, I think 16, I think 17 will be fine. And then let's work on the button. So first, as you can see, this button is basically a rectangle, okay, with a circular borders. So that's one thing, we need to provide the border radius. Second thing, we can see there is a custom color provided to that. So that's second thing, we need to provide the color. The third thing is we want this text color to be white, which is actually black right now. And that's all. That's all. I think we will be defining a little bit of padding as well, from top and bottom, because right now if you will provide it a color, for example, let's say I provide a color and 0xff, and let's take a color code from here. Any red color code we can get, because like we want to keep the integrity of the design or the color of Google color palette. I'm not getting anyone. Red please. No, that's too much. Okay, let me grab the color code from the last project. So that's going to be this one. Okay, so now we can paste it here. So let's see how it looks like if I will define a color for this container. So right now what will happen, you will see that there will be no any space from top and bottom, not from right. You can see like this is how it looks like if you provide the color right now. So that's not what we want, right? So first we will be using decoration. Now whenever you are using decoration, make sure to use the color inside of it. So I'm going to cut the color, paste it inside. Now we want to provide the border radius. So we have direct option border radius. So we can say border radius dot circular, and then we can give it a big value. You can give, like, I'm going for 30. I think that's going to be fine, but I don't think it's going to be visible right now very comfortably, since you can see like there is no spacing, right? How you can see it's like very stuck with that sign in with Google. So we need a little bit spacing. Okay, it's a little bit visible, but we want this spacing, right? You can see above and below the text, and right hand side and left hand side. So that's actually called padding. Now you may be wondering what is the difference between padding and margin, because yeah, there is another thing called margin. So margin is like a separation from other objects, which is like the condition right now people are in coronavirus and stuff, like you have to be a little bit away from people. But if we talk about padding, padding is something you are from your own kind of so that's how you can think about it. So let me show you how the padding works. So if I will go provide a padding, this is how we provide padding. We say edge insets, and then we have multiple options. If we want to define padding from only one side, which can be left, right, top, bottom, then we will use only. If we want to define it from every side, then we will use all. If we want to define it same for vertical and same for horizontal, like you can see the top and bottom are a little bit less compared to horizontal, right? But both of the right and left are same, and top and bottom are same. In that case, we use symmetric. So this is what we are going to use. So I'm going to say horizontal little bit more, around 16, vertical around 8. So if I will save that, you'll be able to see a little bit of spacing. Now we need to move on and provide the styling to our button. So I'll say text style, we will say color, we will say color dot white. I'm going to make it over here. And I'm also going to provide the font size. So I'll say font size, I think 16 should be fine. Let's see. Okay, that looks good enough. Now let me quick go ahead and provide the font as well. So how do we define the font? So let me go. So we have already downloaded or get the font and imported them in the asset folder and then fonts folder. To use them, you have to go to your pubspec.yaml file. They are defined already for you, like example is there in comments, but let me just grab it from here. So you have to define it like very same like this. I just want to make sure we don't spend time writing this. So yeah, you can see similar to this. You just have to get rid of these comments, and you have to define the name of your font, and then you have to define the asset path. So we have this inside the assets, then inside the fonts, and then the name of your font. Okay, so if you're using another font, make sure to update this one, and also you can update the name of this. So how we are going to use this in our app and make this font look like this, we are going to go inside this main.dart file. Now the reason I'm doing it from here, because I don't want to update it for each and every text individually. So what I can do, I can just say font family, and then I can define that I want to use this overpass regular one. But because what will happen, like if you will not define it over here, you will have to go ahead with each and every text and you will be defining the font family for them. Okay, so it's much better to define it once than defining it each and every single time. So we also need to click on get dependencies since we have updated the perf.spec.yaml file. So I'll click on that and let's wait for a second or so and it will be done. Okay, so it's done. Now we need to actually save this and it should be directly reflected, or we can reload this. We don't have a problem in that. Okay, so I don't think the font has been loaded, so I'm just going to close this and rerun the app again. In the meantime, as you can see, we have all successfully completed the user interface for the sign in screen. So the next step is going to be first importing the packages inside the perf.spec.yaml file, and then we are going to use Firebase Auth. We will write Google sign-in function. We are not going to add other sign-in options like email and password sign-in. We will only have Google sign-in in this. So let's go to perf.spec.yaml and we need to add some packages. So if I will go over here, let me grab them from my last project. And we can just paste them over here. One thing which you can notice, I think I have got rid of like this Cupertino one because I'm not going to use it. And what I noticed was when I like kind of added Google Analytics and stuff to my Flutter app was that it is actually increasing the time to load for that websites. And the reason was I was not using it, so I just get rid of it. So you may have a Cupertino one over here. You can get rid of it if you're not using. If you're following how we are going to do, you don't will need this for this project, so you can remove that. So these are the packages which we are going to use except this URL launcher. Let me get rid of that. Okay, what is happening? Sorry, excuse me for this. I'm going to remove this URL launcher. I think it's not the best practice to do these things while it's syncing, but anyways, it's taking more time than expected. So let me close that because it's taking not the right time. We already know that we have completed the whole UI. We just want to make sure that the font is visible or not. We will take care of that. That's not a problem. So let me tell you what are the different packages which we are using and why we are using them. So the first one is Google Sign-in. Of course, we want to use the Google Sign-in. That's the whole purpose. Then this Google Cloud Firestore is something which we will be using in upcoming videos. Then we have this Firebase Auth. It will be required because we are going to integrate Google sign in via Firebase. And then we have this shared preference. This will be used in later upcoming videos as well to make sure the user, if user logged in, then he will be logged in. Okay, that's how it works. This random string is also going to be used once we will use this Cloud Firestore. You'll see in this upcoming videos. Since we have updated the perf.spec.yaml file, we will click on get dependencies. Once this is done, then the next step is going to go inside the project. Then let me close this. Inside the lib folder, we are going to create another package or folder. We are going to call it services. So what is services? I am going to create a file for auth.dart. Okay, this file, in this particular file, we are going to have a function for Google sign-in. So all the code for Google sign-in and other authentication system, whenever I create any app, this is how I usually like to structure, at least for now. I'm not sure if I will update it or not, but I'm fine with this for now. Okay, so inside this auth.dart, I'm going to create a class and I'm going to name this auth service. Then I'll have this curly braces. Now you can see like it's a class, so that's why it does not have those um, arguments and stuff. You can get those through constructor. So now let's create a function. So this particular function which I'm creating for sign in with Google, I'm going to call it sign, not sing, sign in with Google. So that's the name of that function. It's going to require build context, so I'm just going to have that. Okay, so the next step, the first step over here is going to be creating a final which is Firebase Auth. Let me minimize this. Then we will say Firebase Auth, simply creating the variable, nothing more. Then I'm going to define an instance for that, Firebase dot auth dot instance. Then I'm going to say final. You don't actually have to like learn it all, honestly speaking. At least till now I don't just focus on learning this. You can actually just go ahead, but I think it's not going to be the best option. Let me just go ahead and write so that you can follow along. It will be much easier for you. But yeah, I don't think it's necessary to just learn these things. It's if you can do it once and you can keep this, it's fine. Okay, so now we can say Google sign in is equals to new Google sign in. Okay, next we will be creating a final variable which is going to be Google sign in account, because honestly I don't think this is something which is kind of we have to understand, since these are the functions and things which are defined through the plugin. Basically, like they have done that natively for each and every, and then they use media query and stuff. Just a second. Google sign in account is equals to await, then Google sign in dot sign in. So you can see like they have created these function and they have done this. So we need await, so I'm going to use async over here, and we need Google sign in account. Okay, makes sense. Okay, now we will say, I just want to be a little bit quick on this, just Google sign in authentication, and then I'm going to say Google sign in authentication. I think I need to import something. Google not sign in authentication. Okay, then I'm going to say, I always spell sing, I don't know why. Okay, then I'm going to say Google sign in authentication is equals to await Google sign in account dot authentication, and that's all I think. Okay, we also need credentials, so I'm going to say auth credential. Basically what happens is like we can define the credential, we can save them, that's kind of stuff. So whenever we are logging in with, then in Firebase we are basically logging by providing the credential. So that's how this Google sign-in works with Firebase. Honestly, as I said before, I don't think it's required to kind of learn each and everything of this. Most of the projects I have created, I was able to integrate this very easily without even go ahead and learning each and every line. Sign in authentication.id token. Okay, so what we have done till in this one, this is sign in with Google function. Um, we firstly defined this Firebase Auth. Okay, then we defined this Google sign in. Okay, then what we did, we basically created an account for that Google sign in account, and then we ask for the authentication. When we will log in, we are going to do this getting this ID token and access token from that authentication, and we will be passing that to Firebase Auth. So at the end of the day, it's not happening directly, but we are using Firebase to do so. The next step is basically we have these user details. So this user details consist of all the things like user email, user full name, user actually full name is called display name, and it even have the profile picture and all. So as I mentioned in this particular video, we are just going to send the username and user email to the home screen. So I'm going to close this widget and close the sign in. I'm going to go inside the home, and first we are going to add the app bar, which will be as easy as saying widgets dot main app bar, excuse me, dot main app bar, and that's easy. So the app bar is done. The next step is adding the body. So how does our body look like? So let me show you that. It's not actually something which we are going to do in this screen, so let's just skip that. I'm just going to show text with the username. So username. Okay, so I'm going to accept that. I'm going to say string username, string user email. There's things which we will do, but for now let's just quickly do this dot username and this dot user email. So just to clarify some stuff, what I have done, I basically created two variables inside this home stateful widget, and I'm accepting those the value for these variables through the constructor. Now since these variables are not defined any particular value initially, I just want to get those value from the particular activity or screen, however you want to call it, which is sending the user to this. I'm going to define these final because these values are not going to change anytime. So yeah, that's what we will do, and I'm just going to print this. So to print this username, I will say $sign brackets, then I'll say widget dot username. So this is how we can use a variable inside of these double quotes string. We have this $sign, and the reason I use curly braces because my variable name was more than one word. Okay, so if I will be just saying the username, then I would have just said dollar in the username. But since the username, to use this username, it's inside a stateful widget, so we will be calling it by calling widget.username. So if I will run this app right now, Google sign-in will not work. The reason for this is uh, if you will do this much, it will work on your iOS and Android devices. But for a web, there is an extra condition or the things which you have to do. So what is it and how we can do that? So first you have to visit Google sign in. Okay, let me increase this so that it's much more visible. So we are visiting pub.dev Google sign in web. Okay, so this have all the documentation of how to do stuff. We are actually going to cannot access it because that's for another email and stuff like that. So just open it in incognito mode and log in with your email ID. So my email ID is this one. Okay, can you please select it? Okay, click on next, and then I'll be using the password. Next. Okay, so you will see your API console like this. First thing, just want to mention before copying the API key, I don't actually blur my API key. I don't know how to do that. I'm not interested right now to learn even. So I just request, don't use my API key. Go ahead and create your own. At the end of this series, I'm anyways going to delete this particular project. So yeah, just make sure to go and follow this step and get your own key. Okay, so you just have to actually first select the project. So let me increase this and see which project is selected. So right now I cannot see that. Okay, so as it mentions, it's selecting ToDo, but I think that's for another one. Let me click on this, and we can click on all. So I believe this ToDo was the last project of mine, and this is the one which we have right now. Okay, so I'll select that, After selecting it, you need to go to the Firebase back again. Over here, click on this, click on authentication. Click on setup sign in method. Then you have to click on this and enable this. So this is going to be the project public facing name. So when the user will log in, he will be shown that this particular wants to. So make sure to give it the name which you want. So I'm just going to name it ToDo Web App, and your support email, which is going to be the same email if you want, and just click on save. Okay, so as you can see, it's enabled. So now if you will refresh this screen, a new API key will be generated. I think this one it is, not sure. Let's just reload this, and a new API key for Google sign in will be generated. We also need to add this, and where is the head? Sorry for like kind of, I don't know how or why it is loading too much right now. Maybe since we have two projects. So let me just close this one. We don't have a need for this. Okay, let me minimize that, and I'm going to add it over here maybe. I think that's going to be fine. Or maybe we can add it just below this icons. I don't think it matters a lot. So yeah. So right now, as you can see, we have this May 2020 web application, web client auto created, browser client, API keys, Auth 2.0 keys. So none web application. I think this is the one. So click on add it. Copy this. One thing which you will face is it will not function on this debugging, because in when we are like running these web apps, this local host is automatically generated, for example 5239, but we can set it where the Google sign should work on which particular web page and stuff. So it's a bit of a struggle, which you will see right now. Let me show you. So I have copied this API key. I'll paste it over here. Once I will do that, I will do it like this. Okay, so you can see after I have added those packages and I'm running, it's a blank screen. Honestly, I have been like, I have I think more than a week or something maybe. I was struggling with this particular issue. So yeah, you may be noticing that many of your projects which you are trying to run on web, they just show a blank screen, even though when you have each and everything on that app and a lot of things. So yeah, this happens if you have not added these in the index.html. So that was the problem with our app right now. We have added everything, but we were not able to see anything. The problem was this, because we don't have this. So let's wait for a second or so that the app or the web app starts running, and then we can test out if the function is working fine. So to make that, or to use this function, because we just have created this function right now, to use this function we are going to first have something returning from this function. I'm just going to make it future and Firebase user. It will be required later on, since I'm already returning. Let me return this. So what can we do? We can actually return user details. So this user details, I'll be returning this. So if I want, I can use it inside the sign in out when or wherever I'm calling this function. So that will be user details, this one, and paste that. So the reason I'm using a this future Firebase user should be understandable, because this is this user details which I'm returning is a Firebase user. Through user details, I'll be able to get each and everything: user display name, user profile picture, and stuff. And I'm saying this to be a future because this is an async, and this is an await task. It will take some time to get done. So to use this function, you just need to copy this function, go to your signin.dart file, and to this button of yours, you just have to wrap that button in a widget which is called gesture detector. Gesture detector helps us to use a property or function, whatever you know call, on tap option, in which you can just provide a function which you want to call whenever someone's click on that widget. So in the on tap of this container, I want to call that particular function inside the auth.dart, which is actually inside a class called auth service. So first we have to define that. So I'll say auth service dot, then we can access that sign in. No, I think we can access it auth service dot sign. Okay, we have to define it like this. Let me cut that out. You have to go over here. So auth service is equals to new auth service, and through this auth service you will be able to use that function dot sign in with Google. So as you can see, the reason I'm passing this build context is because I need to use that navigator, right? So the function does not need anything like this whole function does not need anything from there. We just are using this context so that we can, we can use it in navigator. Okay, so should it work? Okay, so overall at the end of the day, I think the reason why it was opened and closed was because of a little bit it's not able to handle a lot of stuff. Let me close this, and let me run this again now. Okay, so we have already created the user interface, we have created the function for the Google sign-in, we are also sending the username. So let's do that. User details, username, user details dot display name, and dot email. Okay, so that's what I was mentioning. You can see this email was something which we defined just before, right? So that we can accept these values. Now let's wait for it for a second or so that it launches, and in the meantime, if you have any errors you are facing, feel free to comment them down below. Either I will reply for most cases, or else someone else will help as well. Um, I really appreciate people who are answering other people's, because at most time I'm not like 24/7 available to answer the comments, but I usually try to answer as much as I can. But yeah, so make sure to at least comment that down below. Hopefully I will answer it, or someone else. Okay, so it's finally running, and as you can see, it's a full blank screen, and the reason for that is not just adding this Google sign-in is important, but when we were connecting our app with Firebase, you may remember then there was another line that you have to add. For example, if you're using Firebase Auth, you have to add that script over here. If you're using a database, then you have to add that script. If you're using storage, then you have to add that particular script. Now I'm going to grab that scripts from my last project. So let me show you how they look like. So this is how they look like. Oh my god, you are going to copy those and paste them. So as you can see, these are the script which are required for the Firebase Auth and Firestore. So now if I will run this back again, hopefully it should work if we have not made any other mistakes or errors. So I think I should we can try that. Okay, so congratulations, the app is working perfectly fine, but it will not, the sign-in will not work. The reason for that is, let me show you. If I will click on this, it will show an error, which is, where is it? That's not for client ID. Yeah, so you can see has not whitelisted this particular local host. So that was in the credentials page, if you hopefully you remember. right? So we know that 5000 is actually whitelisted. So we need to go to terminal and then run this command. We just have to remove this same command in this package one. Just copy this command and then change this 7357 to 5000, because that was something which was. So if I will run this, I can close this one now. So it will run on 5000. Now 5000 localhost is actually whitelisted inside the credentials page. Okay, so which we have seen before when we were getting the API key from our Google console. So this will take a time, a little bit of or more. But one thing also which is going to happen with you, and with which I really struggled a lot and was trying to like make it work somehow, is when it will run on this particular the debug kind of browser this Android Studio runs. You will not be able to log in with that. When you will submit your email ID, what Gmail will show that it's not able to run, or some, there is an error for that, right? So what you need to do is you need to copy this, and first let me show you the error which you will face if you will run it on localhost 5000, which is whitelisted, by the way. So if I will click on this, first thing, congratulations, we are able to see the pop-up. But if I will write the email of mine, for example, the Indian app guy@gmail.com, you can see you will be seen by this error that this browser or app may be not secure, try using a different browser. So this was a really big struggle for me, especially since this app what I was creating, user should be logged in, sign in with Google, and then move to the home screen, and then from there I was like sending, updating and stuff like that. So what you should have to do, you just have to copy that from this one. Don't close this. Copy the localhost 5000 from this one and open it in a normal browser and hit enter. When you will do that, you will be able to see this. I'm a little confused, honestly. Why is there a logo? Yeah, it's a Flutter demo. Don't worry, that is just cache thing problem. You may not see this. This is just cache problem because I have 5 in that. Just don't worry about it. But at the end of the day, if you will run this sign in with Google in this particular browser, which is not a debug one, okay, this is something which we opened before, you will be able to see all your account and you will be able to sign in with them. So I'm going to use my normal account, Sanskar Tiwari, and if I will log in with that, we will see a screen where we will have this app bar and we will have our username there. So yeah, we have finally completed this particular part 2. It was a little bit bigger compared to the first video, but yeah, we were able to learn how to create this beautiful UI, how to add images and stuff, how to add fonts. We also learned about how to add Google sign-in with Flutter Web. We also learned how we can utilize the best practices. Something like using the local host over here is best compared to directly using here, which you will struggle a lot. So yeah, we learned a lot, and in the next video what we are going to do is we need to create user field to accept user input, which is going to be the task, right? So if you will visit this website called Get Done, you just need to log in with your email. So let me show you to do of mine of today. So let me just show you that. It will take a second or so and it will logged in. So this is what we need to create now. Okay, we need to create this user input where the user can type something, and we need to upload this data to our Firebase database. We will be using Firestore. So that is something which we'll be doing in the next part. And so yeah, just to make sure you don't miss that out, hit that subscribe button, click on the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.